A royal tiara on a wedding day isn't just jewelry. It's 100 years of family history balanced on one woman's head. And when you actually dig into the stories behind the most famous bridal diadems in European history, the snapped clasps and police escorts, the emperor's parting gifts and aristocratic defiances, you realize these objects aren't decorative. They're documentary. Every stone, every gold wire, every cameo cut from shell or agate holds a specific date, a specific decision, a specific woman who chose what she would place on her head on the single most watched morning of her life. These are the 20 most spectacular tiaras ever worn by royal brides. We're counting down to the one that carries the most history per square inch, and we're telling the full story behind each one. Starting at number 20, the Strathmore Rose Tiara, worn by Lady Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon on April 26, 1923, when she married the Duke of York at Westminster Abbey. Her father, the Earl of Strathmore, commissioned it as a wedding gift. The design mirrors the family's ancestral rose motif in diamond and platinum. She would later become Queen Elizabeth, then Queen Mother, and the tiara would never disappear from royal history because the woman who wore it became the emotional anchor of the 20th-century British monarchy. A beginning disguised as an accessory. Number 19. The York Diamond Tiara, placed on the head of Sarah Ferguson on July 23, 1986. Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip commissioned it from Gerard, specifically as a wedding gift. Ferguson walked down the aisle at Westminster Abbey with gardenias arranged over her hair, the tiara completely hidden underneath. Only after she signed the register and walked back out did she remove the flowers to reveal it, which, given what Gerard built, was worth the wait. A tiara as reveal is theater, and Ferguson played it perfectly. At number 18, the Poltimore Tiara, and Princess Margaret's acquisition of it remains one of the most singular acts in royal jewelry history. In 1959, approximately a year before her wedding, she attended a Sotheby's auction and purchased it herself for £5,500. No royal vault loan, no family heirloom. She bought it. Made by Gerard in 1870, the Poltimore is a towering architectural piece. Its graduated diamond arches can be disassembled into brooches, and the full structure rises dramatically above the head. On May 6, 1960, the first televised royal wedding, she walked down the aisle at Westminster Abbey under a crown of gardenias. Nobody watching could see the tiara. After the ceremony, the flowers came off. That reveal, captured by cameras broadcasting to millions, was staged like the act of a woman who understood her own power. Her husband, Anthony Armstrong Jones, later photographed her wearing it in the bathtub at Kensington Palace, an image so provocative it was suppressed until 2022. After her death in 2002, the Poltimore eventually went to Christie's, selling in 2006 for £926,400, nearly 3 times its estimated value. Its current location is unknown. Number 17 takes us to Greece, and one of the most traveled tiaras in Europe. The Khedive of Egypt tiara, a Cartier scroll-in diamond design commissioned in 1905 as a wedding gift from the Khedive of Egypt to Princess Margaret of Connaught, has appeared at royal weddings in 1905, 1935, 1964, 1967, 1968, and most recently, 2024. In 1935, Princess Ingrid of Sweden wore it to marry Crown Prince Frederick of Denmark. In 1964, Princess Anne-Marie of Denmark wore it to marry King Constantine II of Greece. In 1967, Crown Princess Margrethe wore it. In 1968, Princess Benedicta. And on September 28, 2024, Princess Theodora of Greece wore it in Athens, in the same cathedral where her mother, Queen Anne-Marie, married in 1964, paired with the same Irish lace veil first worn at its original 1905 wedding. One tiara, 6 weddings, 119 years of unbroken use. 16 goes to Princess Mary Donaldson, an Australian commoner who became Crown Princess of Denmark on May 14, 2004. Queen Margaret and Prince Henrik reportedly purchased an antique diamond tiara at auction, specifically as Mary's wedding gift, giving her something old and something entirely hers. She also wore the Irish lace veil with a 99-year lineage, stretching back to that same 1905 Swedish wedding. 2 unrelated objects from different centuries placed together on one afternoon in Copenhagen Cathedral. That's how dynasties construct continuity. At 15, the Diamond Daisy Tiara. Crown Princess Mette-Marit of Norway married Crown Prince Haakon at Oslo Cathedral on August 25, 2001. More than 100,000 people lined the streets of Oslo. She wore the Diamond Daisy Tiara, made in 1910 and given to her as a wedding gift by King Harald and Queen Sonja. Mette-Marit's wedding carried weight beyond ceremony. She was a single mother, the first Norwegian crown princess with a child from a previous relationship, and the wedding required a formal speech of atonement before the Norwegian public. The tiara sits above all of that history now. A daisy. Diamonds. A very modern kind of courage. Number 14. The Queen Mary Diamond Bandeau Tiara. Made by Gerard in 1932, constructed by Queen Mary to house a brooch she had received in 1893 from the County of Lincoln as a wedding gift. For 65 years, it essentially disappeared from public view. Then, on May 19, 2018, Meghan Markle wore it at St. George's Chapel, Windsor, to marry Prince Harry. Queen Elizabeth II had personally shown the couple several tiaras in her private dressing room at Buckingham Palace. The one Meghan chose had been invisible for most of the century. The bandeau design, wrapping horizontally around the head rather than rising above it, was unusual among royal choices, which made it striking. Reports later surfaced that Meghan's first preferred choice was denied due to concerns about its provenance. She wore the bandeau. It was made by the same house that made the fringe tiara for the same queen who made everything. 13. The Greville Emerald Kokoshnik Tiara. Boucheron created it in 1919 for Dame Margaret Greville, a Scottish brewing heiress who collected both jewelry and royal friendships with equal ambition. When Greville died in 1942, the tiara was delivered to the Queen Mother in a black tin trunk. For approximately 75 years, it didn't appear publicly. Then Princess Eugenie wore it on October 12, 2018, to marry Jack Brooksbank at St. George's Chapel. She declined to veil entirely, which was the right decision. The piece features a central emerald of 93.7 carats and a cascading Russian-style kokoshnik frame of diamonds and more emeralds, a design so dramatic that anything draped over it would have been an insult. 75 years in a tin trunk. One afternoon of full visibility. At 12, the Lotus Flower Tiara, also called the Queen Mother's Lotus Flower Tiara. Gerard made it in 1923 as a wedding gift to the Queen Mother, and she wore it throughout her long public life. Queen Elizabeth II inherited it and has lent it to several family members over the decades, including Princess Anne, who wore it at multiple engagements. It's a piece that reads differently depending on what you know. A delicate white diamond flower design that becomes more layered the more you understand about the woman who first wore it on her wedding day and who lived to be 101. Number 11 goes to a tiara that never appears on most lists but deserves its place. The Cambridge Lover's Knot, commissioned by Queen Mary from Gerard in 1913, modeled directly from a tiara owned by her grandmother, Princess Augusta of Hesse. 29 diamond drop pearls hang from interlocking arches of brilliant cut diamonds. When Princess Diana walked down the aisle in 1981, this tiara was waiting for her in the royal vault. Reportedly offered, reportedly declined. She wore her family's tiara instead, but she would wear the Cambridge lover's knot repeatedly throughout her marriage, photographed in it more than almost any other jewel. It became one of the most recognizable images of her public life. The tiara she chose not to wear on her wedding day became the one most associated with her face. 10. Grace Kelly's bridal ensemble for the Monaco wedding of April 19, 1956. Kelly was an American film actress, 3 films with Hitchcock, 1 Academy Award, and she married Prince Rainier III in what was probably the most photographed wedding of the decade. For the civil ceremony on April 18th and the formal portraits that followed, she wore the Cartier Bande de Mer tiara, a convertible piece of ruby and diamond components assembled on a tiara frame, gifted by the Société des Bandes de Mer, Monaco's state-owned resort and casino company. It was a gift from an institution, not a family, which tells you something about how Monaco functions. Kelly had been coached in protocol, dressed by MGM's costume department for the ceremony gown, and photographed by virtually every press agency in Europe. The tiara wasn't an heirloom. It was, in its way, a welcome gift from a principality to a woman it was recruiting. She became Princess Grace. The tiara stayed in Monaco. At 9, the Strathmore tiara aside, one of the most visually striking pieces in the countdown is the Norwegian ruby tiara. But it's the story of Queen Maud's pearl tiara that deserves a number of its own. In 1995, it was stolen from Gerard's London workshop during a burglary and never recovered. A replica was subsequently commissioned. The original is gone. That absence is its own kind of statement. Royal jewelry can vanish. The replica now sits in its place, doing the work of the original, which is either a comfort or a haunting, depending on how you think about objects. 8 brings us to the Spencer tiara, and the morning of July 29, 1981. The wedding of Lady Diana Spencer and the Prince of Wales at St. Paul's Cathedral was watched by an estimated 750 million people. Diana's dress had a 25-foot train. Her veil was tulle, attached to something that told a story before she'd said a word. The Spencer tiara was assembled by Gerard in 1937 for Cynthia Spencer, Diana's grandmother, combining pieces from different eras of Spencer family history. The central heart-shaped motif came from a piece gifted to Cynthia at her own 1919 wedding by Lady Sarah Spencer. The outer sections incorporated elements with lineage stretching back to designs created before 1767 for Viscountess Montague Frances Manby. By 1981, it had already been worn by Diana's elder sister Jane at her 1978 wedding and by her sister Sarah in 1980. It was a family tiara with a family history, not alone, not a performance of royal belonging. The Queen had reportedly offered Diana access to the Cambridge lover's knot. Diana chose the Spencer. That single decision, a bride reaching for her own family's past rather than the vault of the institution she was marrying into, compressed a whole biography into a piece of jewelry. Her brother Earl Spencer later recounted that she had a cracking headache from wearing the unfamiliar tiara all morning. She wore it anyway. After her death in 1997, the Spencer tiara returned to Althorpe. Diana's niece, Celia McCorquodale, wore it in 2018. It's still there, in the Spencer family, where Diana put it back. 7. The Swedish cameo tiara. And the more you know about it, the stranger and more beautiful it becomes. Napoleon divorced Josephine on December 15, 1809. 13 years of marriage ended because she hadn't produced an heir. She signed the act at the Tuileries Palace and retreated to Malmaison. That same year, 1809, the cameo tiara was made, believed to have been a gift from Napoleon to Josephine. Whether it came before or after the divorce announcement isn't fully established. Either way, The timing is extraordinary. A tiara built from intricately carved shell cameos depicting Greco-Roman figures, mounted in gold with seed pearls, containing 0 diamonds. Josephine was famous for her love of cameos. She helped define the Empire neoclassical style. And this piece is pure expression of that obsession. After her death in 1814, it passed through her son Eugene de Beauharnais to his daughter Josephine of Leuchtenberg, who married Crown Prince Oscar of Sweden in 1823. Napoleon's Marshal Jean-Baptiste Bernadotte had been elected King of Sweden in 1810. The tiara had moved from imperial Paris to Stockholm through a web of marriages and bloodlines that Napoleon himself had engineered without knowing what he'd built. By 1844, the cameo tiara was established as Sweden's traditional bridal crown. Princess Birgitta wore it in 1961, Princess Desiree in 1964. Sylvia Summerlath wore it on June 19, 1976, to marry King Carl XVI Gustaf. And on June 19, 2010, exactly 34 years later to the day, Crown Princess Victoria wore it at Stockholm Cathedral to marry Daniel Wessling, a personal trainer who had been her physical therapist. The 0 diamonds detail tends to stop people. Every other tiara on this list carries diamonds by the dozens or hundreds. This one has none. Just gold, pearl, and stone carved by hand, connecting a 21st-century Swedish wedding directly to a French emperor's broken marriage. 6. The Girls of Great Britain and Ireland tiara. Queen Mary received it in 1893 as one of 2 diamond tiaras gifted on her wedding day. This one, presented by a committee of aristocratic women organized under that exact name, the Girls of Great Britain and Ireland, as a collective wedding gift from upper-class British women to their future queen. Gerard made it, a band of diamond-set scrollwork surmounted by diamond points alternating with diamond clusters. Queen Mary gave it to Princess Elizabeth as a wedding gift in 1947. Queen Elizabeth II wore it for the first official portrait taken after her accession in 1952. She wore it for the portrait on the UK's banknotes and coins. She wore it on the 1953 coronation stamps. It became the face of the monarchy for 70 years, a tiara that started as a collective wedding gift and ended up on every piece of currency in the country. 5. The Cartier Halo Tiara, and the specific Tuesday in November 1936 when the Duke of York bought it. November 18, 1936. 3 weeks before his brother Edward VIII's abdication would force him onto the throne as George VI. He paid £1,400 to Cartier for a scrollwork platinum and diamond tiara of deliberate delicacy, small, intricate, wearable. In 1944, the Queen Mother gave it to Princess Elizabeth for her 18th birthday. She never wore it publicly. It was lent to Princess Margaret, then to Princess Anne. The phrase that attached itself to the piece was starter tiara, a petite first diadem for younger royals finding their footing in public ceremony. When Catherine Middleton married Prince William at Westminster Abbey on April 29, 2011, the Queen offered her a choice of 3 tiaras from the royal collection. Catherine chose the halo. The team constructing her look that morning discovered a problem the Queen had apparently anticipated. The veil wouldn't stay attached to the tiara's base. They sewed it directly to the frame. During an exhibition of Catherine's wedding dress at Buckingham Palace later that year, the Queen examined the piece and remarked that one has to do that in case it comes off, and told Catherine the story of her own experience with a tiara that came apart on a wedding morning. The dress rehearsal for that story is number 4. November 20th, 1947. Princess Elizabeth is preparing to marry Prince Philip at Westminster Abbey. She is wearing something borrowed, Queen Mary's fringe tiara, loaned by the Queen Mother, who had received it from Queen Mary in 1936 or 1937. The piece had been made in 1919, when Queen Mary commissioned Gerard to dismantle a diamond fringe necklace Queen Victoria had given her as a wedding gift in 1893, and remount all 633 brilliants and 271 rose-cut diamonds into a tiara. The Gerard Ledger entry, dated November 3, 1919, records, mounting 633 brilliants and 271 rose diamonds from Your Majesty's own tiara, bracelet, and monogram in gold and silver settings in a Russian pattern tiara with adjustable head frame, allowing for old settings. That November morning in 1947, as the hairdresser was securing the tiara into the veil, the catch released accidentally, and the frame snapped. The Queen Mother's reported response, "We have 2 hours, and there are other tiaras." They didn't use another tiara. The broken piece was placed in a box, put under police escort, and rushed to Gerard's workshop for emergency repair. The jewelers welded it back together in time. The wedding proceeded. In photographs from the ceremony, a slight gap is visible in the center of the tiara, the repair line, permanent and visible to those who know to look. Gerard later described the piece's structure as 47 graduated tapering bars set with brilliant and rose-cut diamonds and 46 narrow spikes. What the description doesn't capture is its continuity. Princess Anne borrowed the fringe tiara for her wedding on November 14, 1973. Princess Beatrice wore it on July 18, 2020, paired with a gown borrowed from Queen Elizabeth's own wardrobe. A ceremony scaled to 10 guests at Windsor due to COVID-19 restrictions, the most intimate royal wedding in decades. 3 brides across 73 years, 1 repaired tiara. The gap in the center, still there. 3. The Greville notwithstanding, the Vladimir tiara deserves its place in the upper tier. Queen Mary purchased it from Grand Duchess Maria Pavlovna after it was smuggled out of Russia in 1918, hidden in a briefcase in a Petrograd cellar before a British agent extracted it. The piece, a series of interlocking diamond circles of graduated size, originally made for the Grand Duchess Vladimir, one of the last imperial Russian women to maintain full court life before the Revolution, arrived in the British collection because Queen Mary had the collector's instinct and the connections to acquire it. She later had it adapted so the original pearl drops could be exchanged for Cambridge emerald drops. Queen Elizabeth II wore it throughout her reign. It's a tiara assembled from the debris of an empire, wearing its history openly. 2. The Cambridge Lover's Knot would have been number 1 on almost any list built purely on beauty, or on how often it appeared at the center of royal history. Queen Mary commissioned it from Gerard in 1913, replicating a tiara owned by her grandmother, Princess Augusta of Hesse. 29 pear-shaped drop pearls, each suspended from a diamond lover's knot, arch within a continuous circlet of diamonds. It's the tiara most people have in their mind when they picture a tiara, the platonic form of the thing. Queen Elizabeth II inherited it, wore it, then lent it to Princess Diana in 1981 as a wedding gift. The tiara Diana chose not to wear at her wedding, but returned to repeatedly throughout her marriage. It was photographed on her at state dinners, at gala events, in portraits that became iconic. After Diana died in 1997, it went back to the vault. The Queen lent it to Catherine, Princess of Wales, beginning in 2015. Two very different women at two very different points in royal history, wearing the same knots and the same pearls. And that's why it's number 2. Because number 1 belongs to Queen Mary's fringe tiara. Not for the 1947 snap and the Gerard repair, though that story alone would earn it a place on any list. Not even for the 3 weddings across 3 generations. It earns the top spot because of everything embedded in its making. Queen Victoria gave the necklace to Princess May of Teck in 1893 as a wedding present from a queen to her future queen. 26 years later, Queen Mary decided the necklace was more useful as something else. She brought it to Gerard, stripped it down, and remounted every stone, 633 brilliants, 271 rose cuts, into a new form. The ledger entry from November 3, 1919, reads like an inventory of transformation. Old diamonds, new setting, adjustable frame. A Victorian object rebuilt for a different century. Then it broke on the most watched morning it would ever have. Then it was repaired in time. Then it was worn. Then it was borrowed, and borrowed again, by a daughter in 1973, and a great-granddaughter in 2020. The tiara that came from a necklace, that was made into a crown, that cracked on the morning of a history-making wedding, that was welded back together and worn with the repair line still showing. That is what 100 years of family history compressed into a single object looks like. The repair is still there. Every bride who has worn it since has worn the evidence of that morning. Princess Beatrice, in 2020, in a 10-person ceremony during a pandemic, wearing a piece that carries 1893, 1919, 1947, 1973, and 2020 simultaneously. One object, 5 moments, one unbroken chain. That's what a royal tiara is, at its best. Not a symbol of wealth or status, though it's both. A wearable archive. A mourning that happened once, folded into metal and stone and passed forward. Somewhere, a future bride is deciding what she'll place on her head. She probably doesn't know yet what it will mean. Subscribe for more stories like this.